Go, guys.
Okay, rock and roll.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July 18th, 2024 meeting of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. Would you, to start our meeting, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we got a fun-packed agenda here today. So we'll start with item 1A, which is board appointments and reappointments as part of our Wsafca JPA. On an annual basis, we need to appoint a chair and vice chair to the board. So I'll open it up for discussions or nominations.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Tom for chair and Verna Spezio for vice chair. Or
Okay.
do we have to do it separately? Is that okay?
I have no problem doing it
Okay.
together.
All right.
Fine.
Thank you for the
Okay.
nomination. I will accept.
I think, was it seconded?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can second.
We'll just do it verbally. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations to, I guess, us.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, for your service all these years.
Item 1B, presentation by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of Wsafca. Is there anyone here today that wishes to bring up a subject not on the agenda? Or has there been any correspondence that needs to be discussed? Okay. We'll move on to item 1C, monthly and year-to-date revenue and expenses.
Good morning. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, good morning, members of the board and staff. I'll be reporting out on the revenue and expenditures for the month of May 2024. In Fund 870, the beginning balance was approximately $11.6 million. The agency received $2.8 million. Majority of that was from the second installments of the assessments back in May. Expenses were $964,000, making the ending cash position for Fund 870 at $13.46 million. And Fund 871, the beginning balance was $9.17 million. The agency received almost $13,000 in revenue, and expenses were $161.4 making the ending position for Fund 871 approximately $9.02 million. At the end of the month, the combined cash position was $47.5 million, and as of July 10th, the position is at $47.3 million. That concludes my report. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Jen. Now on to our consent agenda. We have 3 items on there today. A resolution to appropriate funds for engineering and designing efforts for the Stone Lock project. Consideration of a contract amendment with Mark Thomas and Company for work on the Southport Levee Improvement Project, and approval of our June 20th, 2024 meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to move the consent item.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5A, Wsafca project updates.
Thank you, Chair Ramos and members of the board. Just a few highlights of kind of what's going on. First of all, thank you for approving the Mark Thomas amendment. You may recall this is a second amendment in a single 12-month period. We're really trying to get this over the goal line. We're having some challenges getting DWR to commit to a final back check on comments to a record of survey. So, but hopefully we're at the end of that. So. Moving along, in terms of the Southport restoration project, the restoration contractor is back on task. The primary activities right now are doing irrigation, 1 24-hour period per week. So it's going continuously for 24 hours, and then they're also working on eradication of invasive species. So that's, and they'll be preparing then for some replantings in the fall. As you recall, we had some negative monitoring results last year, and so we're trying to make up for that deficit, which is why you approved the contract extension last month. On to the federal project. The Wyville North, the levee degrade is already completed, so they've got that done. They've made the cabinets for the new pump station. We've been working diligently with the Corps and with PG&E to try to get the easements in place, and trying to avoid having to get a permit through the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. So that's where a lot of the effort has been, but the contractor is making great progress in terms of getting this project advanced and probably zipped up in the month of October. Sac River North, so 30% design is complete, internal to the Corps, however, so we're not going to get a chance to review the 30% plans until September or October. They have to go through an internal process. Other things that are coming up relative to working on the Sac River North project is a value, or this particular segment, right? Segment 3, which goes from essentially from the ziggurat all the way to the Indian Heritage Center site. So all the way around the Broderick Boat Ramp. That's what's being looked at right now. The Corps has asked for a few additional borings, and really I think what they're trying to prove out is whether or not there's a need for additional rehabilitation or not. They're looking for a combining layer that would demonstrate that the levee is adequately armored as it is without needing to do further, like a slurry wall. So I think that's some additional explorations that are going on. There's active drilling going on today and through the next couple of weeks in the Rivers community. Some of that's down below Rivercrest Drive. They'll be up on top of Rivercrest Drive, I believe, in the next 2 weeks. And then we've also are working to get secure permission to go and do some drilling over at the CHP site. So that's not that presents its own hurdles to get onto that property. So we're working through that with the Army Corps. Let's see. You may, if you went through the Corps slides, you may have noticed that now they've pulled out and created an individual slide for the I Street Railroad, right? So the UPRR, the Amtrak line goes right through our levee. It is seen as being height deficient, and so what the Corps and what we've agreed to is to have them stand up a separate team just to deal with the rail line, so that it doesn't impact design of the other segments that are adjacent, and those projects can move forward. So it'll be on its own path. In terms of the cost estimate update, we continued to be they were on I think we told you that they had a exercise that they had to respond, that the Corps needed to respond back to the Office of Management and Budget about how our project is looking in terms of being able to stay within cost. So they finished that cost update. One of the efforts that they did employ was to reduce the project footprint. So the real estate costs were reduced by about $130 million. That has helped bring down the overall cost and stay below what's called the 902 congressional limit. And happily, we still remain at a very positive benefits cost ratio of 1.8. So everything's copacetic, things are moving forward, no crashes right now. It's something that we're going to have to continue to monitor and pay attention to.
This was the executive branch OMB or
Yes.
intern to the Corps?
Yeah.
Okay.
OMB told headquarters, you need to go and look at what's going on with these costs. We're not the only organization. They came up with a cost estimate last year. San Joaquin also had to go through the same process.
Well, it's that real estate issue you guys keep mentioning.
This is that's one of the issues. And then, so just to be clear, later this year, the Corps will also go through another formal economic analysis for the project, which actually has to go get reviewed in Walla Walla, Washington. It's a completely separate cadre of individuals who do that work. And what we're hoping to show is that through the completion of Yebel North and South, now that the contracts have been awarded and they're, and Yebel South is complete, that we'll also be able to, reduce the overall cost estimate, because we've been able to come in about 30 million under what those cost estimates were for those two projects. Lastly, let me just close out with the House has passed the energy and water bill, and they maintained the president's budget number in that appropriation, so that will go on to the Senate, and hopefully the Senate will act before their August recess. And so just to let you know, so project funding is secure, and the Corps has plenty of money to keep moving projects forward. That's my update. Let me know if you have any questions.
Norma?
I have some questions. You mentioned boring. Where exactly is the boring taking place?
Like they're in the streets. So Fountain Drive. So at the base of the levee, when you're in the rivers, so if you're up on Rivercrest Drive and you look down the slope, so that street down there is Fountain Drive. Right. That's where a number of the borings are happening.
I saw that. So what do the borings do? I guess I'm trying to get a little more information on what a boring does. How does it determine,
Sure.
safety?
So what they're doing is they're sampling for different soil types at different elevations. Mm-hmm. So what they do is they go down, and sometimes as far as 100 feet, and they look at what the strata is of the different types of soils. Sediment, yeah. And really what they're looking for to make sure is that if there's a need to put in, they want to know that there's a clay layer, of what they call a confining layer, that has the ability to resist some of the water pressures when the water levels are high. Ultimately, that's what it is. They do that in multiple places because they're trying to get a better picture of what's happening underground, mm-hmm. and determine if there's not that layer, do they need to put in a slurry wall? So that's kind of the evaluation that they go through in terms of the boring part. Okay. It's much more complicated than that. I'm simplifying it, and I'm not a geotech, so there's only so far I'm going to go.
No, that's great, and that's been done throughout all of West Sacramento in the past. Types of boring.
I would say no, not entirely. So there's places where rehabilitation has occurred in the past where we've had to do fixes. And we generally go and get geotechnical analysis before we do that work. But there's still a number of places I think that we haven't fully explored. I'll give you the good example, probably the best example from my knowledge is the South Cross Levee. Like I don't think we've done any work relative to geotechnical explorations across the south part of the levee, and then probably even along the Deepwater Ship Channel East levee. There's only a limited number of work that's probably been done over time.
Okay, thank you. I have two more questions real quick. You mentioned the Amtrak. We still use the old I Street Bridge. That's the reference that you made. Is there ever a plan to use another track? I mean, we're talking about building the new bridge eventually, in 2040, something like that. Will you ever contemplate perhaps using that as part of the...
I don't think so.
Okay.
So
because the old bridge, I mean, it's I'm assuming
yeah,
it's going to be around for another 100 years or so, but...
It's owned by the railroad, I believe.
Okay.
That's right. So what you're talking about is a railroad relocation, and that generally is a very long-term item. Okay. And if the railroad is not interested in doing that, I think the likelihood is very slim to none that it would happen.
All right. Thank you. And then finally, you mentioned bids. Do we also always go with the lowest bids in determining who's going to do the work? Does Wsafca use the same criteria of low bids that the city does? Someone asked me that, and I
On
wasn't sure.
on a construction contract, we award to the lowest qualified bidder.
Okay,
Yes.
so the same thing. All right, thank you.
I have a quick question that follow up to that. The area where you mentioned the borings on Fountain Drive, there's, that's near Rivercrest Drive, and it was shared with me that housing had been paused in that area. Is there any restrictions with this project of new home development in the area of this project?
No, we haven't imposed any additional restrictions. From time to time, we do get an application for a development project that we sometimes comment on, and sometimes we say we have no comment. To be frank, the river's plots along Rivercrest Drive are a little bit of an anomaly these days. Generally, after Hurricane Katrina, the Central Valley Board has been working to prohibit waterside developments, waterside of a levee. However, these lots were previously approved through an Army Corps permit process in the 70s, I believe. So it's an awkward situation because they all have to go through the Corps' 408 permitting process, and that takes some time. There is recorded easements. There was a negotiated deal that was led by Downey. The developer, Oakstone Development Company, worked with Downey Brand as well as KSN, I believe it was. And so there are recorded easements on both, for the levee as well as for the erosion control on the water side of those lots. However, due to the nature that it's still water side of a levee, it has to go through an additional permission. And that adds a significant amount of time.
Thank you, very helpful.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to 5B, which is director's comments. And seeing everyone shake their heads that there's no comments, I'd like to move to 5C, which is adjournment. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. You guys have a good week.